Welcome, everybody, and good evening. I want to welcome you all to our Good Local News panel. My name is Judy Weinstein, and I'm one of the leaders of Markers for Democracy. Markers is an all-volunteer grassroots activist group founded in the aftermath of the 2016 election, and we have been writing postcards to voters since 2017, originally in person in New York City, and since March of 2020, which is over 5 years, virtually on Zoom with postcard writers from around the country. We focus on down ballot races. We write all year round for special elections, school board elections, and other local elections. We've hosted over 900 speakers on our morning Zooms, which we co-host with two other all-volunteer groups, Downtown Nasty Women's Social Group and Team Min. Our three groups have also co-hosted three 24-hour postcard marathons, and our guests include candidates, elected officials, journalists, authors, and leaders of many organizations. Our guests range from U.S. Senators Ossoff and Warnock to 18-year-olds running for school board. We've hosted writers like Molly Jong-Fast, Rebecca Traister, Joyce Vance, and Tim Miller, historians like Princeton professor Julian Zelizer and Heather Cox Richardson, organizations like Media Matters, as well as our co-host, the Media and Democracy Project. We host monthly postcarding boot camps for beginners, monthly crafting Zooms as community building events. We keep over 6,000 people informed through our newsletter, Mobilize, social media, and our own Slack. We have a giving circle through the States Project where we raise funds for legislative state races. Our interest in state and local races has led us to an interest in local journalism because, as we've learned from our friend David Pepper, author of Laboratories of Autocracy, without local journalists in state capitals or at City Hall, a lot of harmful legislation gets passed without anyone knowing about it. We're pleased to be co-hosting this event this evening with the Media and Democracy Project, and I'm turning it over to Jonathan Rice to take it away.
Thank you, Judy. So this event is Judy's brainchild, and it's also the first time that the Media and Democracy Project has done a joint event. So we really appreciate Markers and Judy for their inspiration and collaboration. Very briefly, the Media and Democracy Project, or MAD as we like to call ourselves, is an all-volunteer, nonpartisan grassroots organization founded in 2020. We fight for a more informative and pro-democracy press operating in the public interest. In particular, we advocate and empower people to engage civically, to support local and nonprofit journalism, such as the speakers tonight, to advance media literacy and engage in media criticism, for legislative and regulatory solutions to support better media, and to defend freedom of the press. MAD has also created a local journalism directory to help everyone find good news coverage in their state or community. And the work doing that has made us very aware of the many, many excellent news outlets that there are throughout the country. We selected the four tonight. They're all excellent papers and editors, but they also represent the variety and breadth of approaches that news outlets take to serve their communities. And we thank the editors who are speaking today. Core to MAD's mission is educating and engaging people on issues related to press and press freedom, and the bulk of this event will fulfill the education aspect. But please stay to the end and pay attention to our follow-up emails, which will ask you all to engage to support local journalism. In addition to the action items, we also have regular monthly meetings and special events such as this, and we'll provide links at the end. As I noted before, this is MAD's first collaborative effort, so it's very appropriate that Stephanie Murray, the director of the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University, is moderating, since fostering collaboration is part of their co-mission. MAD has first worked with the center in 2022 when we were part of their first annual U.S. Democracy Day effort. Democracy Day mobilizes hundreds of news organizations to produce reporting related to and in support of democracy, which is really essential, particularly today. Stephanie has been a professional journalist, but is now focused on leading the center and fostering the work that they do in collaborative journalism, local journalism, and community engagement. She has a master's degree from the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University, and we're delighted that Stephanie Stephanie, that you're moderating tonight, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. Everyone didn't need to know all that about me. It's so nice to be here, and it's nice to see folks from all over the country in the chat. Thank you for dropping all your local news outlets. If you joined late, that's what we're doing in the chat, is drop a link or the name to the local news organization that you read or you subscribe to or you watch, so that we can get an idea of what good local news might be in your community. So yes, I'm Stephanie Murray. As Jonathan said, I work at the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State. I've worked in journalism for 23 years, 15 years in newspapers, and 9 years now on the academic side. And so tonight, before I introduce our panel, I do want to provide just a little bit of context about the topic, because some of you here are probably very well versed in why we're here and why some of these amazing editors that you're going to hear about are in the positions they're in today, and others might not be so familiar. So I always like to start out with some scene setting. So if you know this story, just bear with me. But the story is that the media industry in the United States is shifting massively, and it has been shifting for the last 20 to 25 years. You probably know the fact, obviously, that newspapers across the United States have been really, really hard hit. They've been shrinking, they've been closing. There's been a market failure for local news, and this has been driven by a lot of reasons over the last 2 decades. Of course, technological change was a key driver of the market failure that we have experienced in local news, because as things moved online, a lot of news organizations didn't move online as quickly and didn't update their business models to align with the way that the world was moving quickly enough. And I worked for some of those newspapers, so I feel very comfortable saying that and calling us out. Then, of course, social media. So social media and technology platforms dramatically changed media, which used to primarily be a one-to-many form of communication. We all watched similar news programs, or many of us would go to similar sources in our states or our counties or our cities for news. That one-to-many kind of media setup, and that's not how it is today because of that technological change that's really been driven a lot by social media. Many of us, and this too, we all have this in our hands right now, or it's near you, and anyone can be a creator and share information today. And so that has also contributed to the dramatic shift in news. So all this led to advertising going to all those places. Advertising used to be in that one-to-many media system that was owned primarily by a handful of media organizations and broadcast companies. And now there is media everywhere we turn. Your phone is filled with media. Your computer is filled with media. There are content creators all over trying to put content in our faces, and there's advertising all around it. And so as the market has shifted, we've seen a collapse in local news and a huge shift in national news. And we're going to see more of that with the vote today to rescind money for public media, which is a whole nother topic. But the positive behind all of this is that there has been a massive amount of innovation in the United States as this market failure has happened. Not enough yet, but there's been a lot. And the editors you're going to hear from in a moment represent some of the best of that innovation in this country. There's been a rise in nonprofit news organizations around our country, mission-driven news organizations that work on a nonprofit model, which is a tax status and not a business model, but they're built differently than news organizations of the past. And they are popping up all over our country. They are topic-based, they are geographical-based, and they are starting to grow and thrive. We have a lot of hyper-local news organizations that have started in the United States. We have some amazing newsletters. We have some amazing podcasts. And so that's what we really want to highlight today, is how that massive shift in market failure has led to what you're going to hear about in just a moment. And so I'd like to introduce the panel, and then we're going to jump into some questions. So we have a set of questions that we're going to ask the panel. I'll lead that. But please drop your questions in the chat. We want this to be also informal. So if there's something really amazing or really pressing that you want to know, drop it in the chat. You can message me, and I'm happy to interrupt the conversation and talk more about a tangent that someone wants to take. Otherwise, we'll go through our questions, and then we're going to leave about 30 minutes for you all to ask questions, 20 to 30 minutes at the end. So with that, let's talk about the panel. So first we have Donna Ladd, who is the founding editor and CEO of the Mississippi Free Press. So the Mississippi Free Press has a goal of deep public interest reporting to inspire solutions for Mississippi's challenges. That's another innovation we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years, is a really amazing focus on solutions reporting, and Donna does that really well. Also, we'd like to welcome Akash Mehta, who's the editor-in-chief of New York Focus. So New York Focus is an independent nonprofit newsroom that investigates power in the Empire State. And it is guided by a belief that politics is not sport. It impacts people's lives. These decisions are not a game. So Akash is going to tell us more about that. And then we have Nina Ignaczak, who's the founder and editor of Planet Detroit in my home state of Michigan. Planet Detroit is focused on the environment and public health in Detroit and in Michigan. And it centers grassroots voices, holds power accountable, spotlights solutions, and serves the community. That's another innovation. Many news organizations today, like Nina's, focus on grassroots power, voices, community engagement, talking to the people and letting them make decisions and help guide coverage rather than a top-down approach. And then Angela Copeland, welcome, who's the editor of The Paper in Morganton, North Carolina, which is an all-local weekly community newspaper that delivers deeply reported original journalism in print and online. And they've earned more than 30 state and national awards in just 2 years. And Angela is a great example of the fact that print, while it has changed, is not dead. Print is a really important form of media. So welcome to the panel. So to start off with, I've given short introductions about each of you, a little bit about what you do, but I'd like to go around the room and just have you first expand a little bit about your outlet and your mission. Tell us just a little bit more about yourself. So let's start with Donna. Do you mind going first?
Hey, y'all, and thank you for having me from beautiful downtown Jackson, Mississippi, or very close. Let's see, what can I tell you? I kind of in some ways, I come from the alternative media world. We did the Jackson Free Press here after I moved back to Mississippi, after decades after I left, saying I would never return. We started the Jackson Free Press as basically an alt weekly, but a very inclusive alt weekly, which wasn't as common as it should have been at the time. In 2002, as a low profit, as we called it. And then in 2020, I made the transition along with my partner, my new partner, Kimberly Griffin, who had been with us for years at the Jackson Free Press. We made the transition into starting a statewide nonprofit newsroom. And we are named, well, both papers were named after the Mississippi Free Press of the 1960s, which was a movement newspaper, a multiracial group of folks. And so we've been doing a nonprofit statewide since 2020.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Akash, do you mind going next?
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here, especially on this panel. I'm excited to get to work to know the work of the paper, and the Mississippi Free Press and Planet Detroit are just sort of north stars of this nonprofit burgeoning movement. So really excited to be here. I was not expecting to be a journalist. I thought I would go into advocacy or law or politics. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I was sort of a local politics nerd. I was on my local community board. I interned for the city council. And then I went away to college, came back during the pandemic, and was just sort of reconnecting with some people that I had met and known in New York politics. And this was this crazy moment where we were at the center of the global news cycle because we were the epicenter of the pandemic at the time. This is, March 2020. And in particular, our governor was in all of our living rooms reassuring us that this is what, strong, competent leadership looks like in a pandemic. And it turned out that it took, upturning one leaf to find that, in fact, he was mismanaging very basic aspects of the state's pandemic response and pushing through a whole host of decisions sort of under the cover of night, my first stories were about these enormous Medicaid cuts that, which I've been thinking about recently, that he was making, even at the cost of rejecting federal aid. And as I was sort of learning about these things, and freelancing a little bit on them, not with the intention of turning it into a career, it was just very surprising to me that these stories hadn't been published, and that my friends and family who were talking about New York for once because it was in the news cycle didn't know about it. And so I and a number of friends, including, by the way, Sam Mellons, who's Judy's son, got together and hatched a plot over these weekly Zoom meetings throughout 2020. And with very little in the way of money or nothing in the way of a business plan, we sort of threw up a site in later that year. And yeah, that was the story.
Thank you. That happens more than probably a lot of folks know, that people get here and they didn't intend to be a journalist. They didn't intend to lead a local news organization, but they feel called to do so or happen into it for some sort of reason. So, Nina, you're next on my round the room
All right.
show.
Well, again, I'm echoing Donna and Akash to be really honored to be on this panel, and am really excited about just learning from other people who have they're trying to do what we're doing, which is, create new media in a space that is so turbulent. I have a similar story. I did not intend to be a journalist. Well, I shouldn't say that actually. I was editor of my high school paper and I did intend to be a journalist. And then I kind of went off on another track, ended up working in community and urban planning for about 15 years, focused on environment, and really noticed, during that time, and grew frustrated with the way that local government functioned around environmental issues, and the way that issues were framed, and how power was structured, and kind of the lack of opportunity for people who are impacted to have their voices heard. So I left that career about 12 years ago, and I did a lot of different things in journalism, freelancing, worked in public radio for a little while. And a friend of mine who I met at our local public radio station and I were talking, and I told her I'd always had this dream of, starting a local environmental publication, because I felt like all of the local coverage of the environment was just so thin and really watered down and didn't reflect local voices, and was really centered on authoritative institutional expertise, and was frankly really boring and irrelevant. And so Martina and I were talking about how we might be able to do something different in Detroit. And at the time I was working a full-time job at another startup, and I just sort of started doing this Planet Detroit thing in my free time as a Substack newsletter, just looking around and trying to aggregate what news there was out there about the environment, just kind of for my own interests. And people seem to be really interested in it. People sign up for the newsletter. So it was entirely bootstrapped. This was 2019, so shortly before the pandemic started, like in the April of that year. And it's just been, I would say an organic growth ever since. But 6 years later, I mean, every year we've grown the audience, we've doubled our revenue about every year. And to this point, we have two full-time reporters, one managing editor, and myself, and a couple of other part-time staff. And we're producing 2 newsletters a week. We're doing original reporting on all kinds of issues impacting Detroit and Metro Detroit and Michigan, including air quality, including water quality issues, asthma, health, you name it. And it's still really hard. So we'll get into some of that, but we've been lucky enough to be able to grow on a lot of grant funding, and we're trying to figure out now how to make that not the main source of our revenue, because we feel that we have to figure out how to how to be really sustainable. We want to be here in the future, and we feel like we're delivering a great product for our audience who value us. So we're looking towards the future. We're looking to do more across Michigan, and really building out a lot of the partnerships that have sustained us since the beginning, which include partnerships with other local media organizations, as well as partnerships with community organizations. Those have been really integral since the very beginning. So yeah, I guess that's all I'll say for now. I'm sure there'll be more to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you, Nina. I love all the backgrounds. We have a almost lawyer, an urban planner, community organizing. Angela, tell us more about the paper.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone. So unlike some of the other panelists, I knew I wanted to be a journalist mainly because it gave me a license to ask questions I otherwise couldn't or wouldn't, perhaps. Our newspaper, the paper, and yes, that really is the name. People kind of give us grief and yet like it all at the same time. Our founder and publisher, Alan Van Alpen, also is a bit of a marketer, and we all call the paper, no matter what newspaper is in your area, the paper. Did you see that in the paper? Did you pick up a copy of the paper? So we are the paper. We are a hyper-local print publication, but also we are strongly jumping into new media as well. We're in Western North Carolina, right on the edge. I would say our deepest coverage is in forcing transparency at the local government levels, at City Hall, County Commission, Board of Education. But we also recognize the beauty of our area, the people, the programs. So being on the edges of Appalachia, we have a strong cultural component to the paper. We're looking at business trends and environmental issues as well. So I think we try to cover as many bases as possible, and that's challenging with a small staff, but we're trying to focus on all of the areas that impact the people that call Burke County home.
Thank you, Angela. I just want to get real quick to one question from Joe, because it's a quick, easy one. For everyone, just how frequently do you publish, and are you focused? Does anyone do investigative news? Nina's topic-based, we talked about. Like roughly how often do you, Angela, are you publishing?
Well, the print comes out weekly. We come out on Saturdays, but we also do newsletters, emailed newsletters during the week. Cool. And we do take time to do investigative series as well. We've looked at housing is one of them, homeless in our county. So we have done several series. We've also done, I wouldn't call it as in depth of a series as those other two, but we did a 3-prong kind of story that took 4 months about one woman's journey through the justice system with a sexual assault.
Yep, great. And then Donna, Nina, and Akash, do you publish as you have content, or you want a regular schedule?
We're on a we're on a regular daily schedule, Monday through Friday. I mean, we'll publish some on Saturday and Sunday if there's something that we need to publish or set things to publish. We do newsletters every day of the week. We printed at the Jackson Free Press, and we don't print now, which I have mixed feelings about. I'm thinking about I have all the boxes in the warehouse, I'm thinking about maybe doing some print in news deserts. My friend Lisa at the Baltimore Beat distributes her print publications, and I'm just, I don't miss press days, but I miss printing. And then we do a wide variety of work, but we do investigative reporting. I'll just give one quick example that we're super proud of. We do kind of systems investigative reporting a little bit more than chasing the latest juicy story or the juice or bad guy. I mean, we'll do that too, but we've done this project since the year we launched the MFP in 2020 called Trusted Elections. It's been support. I saw Michael Bolden in here, and American Press Institute supported it early. Pulitzer Center, Black Voters Matter Fund. And it's basically to fact check every voting precinct in 82 counties, every election. And Ashton Pittman, our news editor, and his husband Liam do that work. And it's been a slog and we always find a lot of errors. And, but finally, we got impact this year when the state legislature passed a law that you couldn't change any precinct locations within 60 days of the election. There are more things that need to happen, but that's a really big deal. But it's systemic slog. A lot of our systems reporting is about that, how the systems actually work and where the weaknesses are in the systems.
Yep.
It's very different because it's not seen as sexy and it's not in and out very quickly. But we do other kinds of investigative work too.
Yeah, that's a really important component, though, of pro-democracy and just democracy reporting in general. And if you weren't doing that, Donna, no one else would.
No one ever reported, and it's hard work. Other people pick it up, but they're not doing it themselves. And so, and we have another big one underway now that I can't really talk about what it is, but it's about systems. It's like going back and trying to figure out why things don't actually change or how somebody was able to legally commit what we think of as corruption in the first place because the systems, and it's not a partisan thing because very often it's it's people on all sides. It's the state, it's local, it's federal, the holes.
Yeah, it's a slog, but it's also expensive. So that's why for folks who are watching, that's why we're always asking for your support. And we are dropping donation links and subscription links in the chat to these news organizations because this work takes time and takes money. Akash and Nina, you are publishing daily, or
We're
as you have
publishing about once a day, Monday through Friday. And we do a mix of, we don't really do much news coverage. We mostly do sort of bread and butter accountability stories, and then every month we do a few big investigative projects.
Yep, great. And Nina?
Yeah, we publish about 1 or 2 stories a day. We produce 2 newsletters, a Tuesday kind of in case you missed it, and then Friday is kind of our main newsletter where we publish all of our reporting for the week, and we also publish a piece that summarizes some of the other reporting. We do investigative work. Some of it is grant funded. So, some of the bigger projects are actually like set aside and we can bring in additional resources. We try not to compete with dailies to break news unless, there's something that's really, really relevant to our audience. And even then we try to take a second day approach to it so we can add some more context. So some of the bigger investigations we've done have included tips from regulatory authority employees that have tipped us off to pollution and enforcement issues, and a lot of advocacy tips is where we're getting a lot of our investigative and accountability stuff right now. But we do have some other stuff planned for the year that I also can't quite talk about yet.
Yeah. So Nina just brought up a really great point that we didn't really touch on yet is grant funding. So that's one of the things for folks who are just becoming familiar with this, the change in the media industry. Philanthropic dollars, traditionally, pre the last 15 plus years, really went to support public media, and there wasn't a lot of philanthropy supporting all types of other media. That's changed in the last 20 years. And today there is tens of millions of dollars in the United States being invested in media of all kinds, nonprofit media, as well as for-profit media and all kinds. There's a huge market, and there's a lot of fundraising being done by news today. And we're also, many of us, asking for donations like we talked about. So we've been talking a little bit about content. So let's just stay on the content thread for a moment. So let's go around the room and have you each talk a little bit about some of the top issues that you're covering for your audience, what's most important right now to them. And then tell us a little bit about one piece of content, one article that you have broadcast or published recently that you think illustrates why the work that you do matters. And Akash, I'm going to start with you because you just answered a really great question in the chat about the elections there in New York.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a few we cover every political issue in New York, but our biggest focuses are the criminal justice system, especially the state prisons, which get less attention than the jail at Rikers on Rikers Island, but incarcerate 10 times more people, oftentimes in even worse conditions, and with almost no scrutiny. So we publish a lot on the prison system. We do a ton on climate and environmental policy. New York in 2019, on paper, committed to the most aggressive climate targets of mandates of any state in the country, but the years since then have been a story of just the failure to implement, the failure to allocate any money to make those goals a reality, and we're falling behind. We're falling behind red states, let alone the other blue states that we sort of compare ourselves to. Um, we do a lot on social services and the programs in New York, that we have the largest public welfare system of any state in the country. But again, the devil is in the details, and so many people fall through the cracks, and it's on the ground, that system can be this bureaucratic morass of understaffed local social service offices with, enormous paperwork reductions, forcing people to basically work a second job in order to access benefits. So we report a lot on that. We report on housing. We are about to bring on a full-time immigration reporter as of next Tuesday, which could not be more important in this in this moment. Um, and sorry, what was the second part? Oh, a story just to talk
Yeah,
about.
like
Okay,
one story, or it could
yeah.
be, maybe it's a community engagement event, maybe it's an interaction, just something you think illustrates the importance of the work you do.
There are of course many to pick from. I've been thinking about one as I've been reading the news out of the Supreme Court this week. In particular, people may have seen that, as they rubber stamp so much of what Trump is doing, they're doing it in the US Supreme Court are issuing these memoranda that where they don't actually explain their decisions. They just give their ruling without having to give a rationale, which is sort of antithetical to the to how we think about the justice system of public deliberation and on major topics. That strategy had been pioneered, it turned out, by the Court of Appeals in New York, which is our state's highest court. And there was a moment where this was, about a year after Dobbs, where the U.S. Supreme Court and its rightward tilt, or more than tilt, had gotten, of course, a huge amount of attention. It was the biggest political issue in the country. And what we found, and Sam Mellons, who I mentioned, found, um, is that our court, the State Court of Appeals, had that same, or had a similar rightward lurch. Um, 4 members of the 7-member court had ruled in lockstep in 96 out of 98 cases that year, rolling back the rights of workers and tenants and defendants, and really taking New York from relatively liberal jurisprudence to a pretty conservative one, without any attention. Like, this is an enormous, and this happens so often in even a state like New York. There are these enormously powerful entities that get no scrutiny. If you Google News search Court of Appeals and date stamp it to the day before that article that we wrote, you will find nothing on the court as an institution. Um, and um, and so we published the story, and then we got lucky because the chief judge on the court stepped down due to an unrelated corruption scandal, and so there was a vacancy on this court. And because of the nature of their bare majority, this conservative bloc's bare majority, it meant that vacancy and how it was filled would determine the ideological balance of the court. Um, these affairs of nominations to the court and confirmations are incredibly sleepy affairs, usually in New York. No nominee to the court has ever been rejected. The last one got like 2 minutes of debate on the floor. But because of our article, this became it sort of set the framework for how to think about this vacancy, and it became the biggest political fight in Albany for a matter of months. And we called up the Senate Judiciary Committee chair for his comment, and he was like, "Well, I could give you my comment, but it would just be what I read in New York Focus last week." And that first story and subsequent ones really sort of set the contours for that fight, which ended up in the rejection of a conservative nominee to the court, the appointment of the current Chief Judge, Rowan Wilson, um, who, among other things, is the first Black Chief Judge, and sort of put New York State, put that court back on the course it was before.
I see some clapping. Yes. Thank you, Akash. Angela, do you mind going next? So the question is, just to refresh, tell us a little bit about topics that are important that you're covering to your audience, and then something that you're proud of.
Well, right now we are in the filing period for candidates for upcoming municipal elections. So we're doing daily stories and updates about that. The last day for filing is tomorrow, and we have several seats with no candidates at this point. And so that's something that we've actually been doing stories about that apathy in our community, and now it's really coming to roost. So we've been doing a lot of stories about that. In one community, one of the aldermen stepped down, and he and other aldermen are calling for the town to basically relinquish its charter and dissolve itself. So that's something also that we're following and obviously reporting on. We're also doing a lot of work about the business climate in our county. Morganton is the county seat, and they claim to want development and want new businesses, but yet there are a lot of obstacles they put in the way for that to happen. And so we're trying to chip away at some of those obstacles. And I mentioned in my introduction that we are in the Western North Carolina. So obviously there's still considerable impacts from Hurricane Helene. We still have businesses and parks and services that are closed or unavailable because of it. And so that's something we are continuing to follow and ask questions about. The one thing you mentioned, a story might be proud of, or something, an event, and I'll offshoot off of our coverage of the hurricane. So we were the only media outlet that gave our content related to the hurricane completely free. So we do have a traditional paywall on our website, but that content was offered free for everyone, and we were the only ones to do that. And while that got us some great kudos in the community and the state, that's not why we did it. It's because people needed that information. They needed to know where resources were and where they could go. And we continue to keep our hurricane coverage free for everyone.
Angela, seeing everything in Texas, just a side note, that must have brought back a lot of just traumatic, bad memory in
Absolutely. It was, and it kind of opened that wound a little bit again here. And just as an aside, I used to live in that area. When I moved,
You lived in Hill Country in Texas?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I was living west of Austin. And so where that Kirk County, that was the next county over from where I was.
Oh, wow.
So between that and what we went through end of
Yeah.
September of last year, it was just, I don't know, it
You're
seemed
an
a little,
expert.
it
You're an
seemed a little
expert on a
raw
topic.
for everybody.
Yeah. You become an expert on a topic you never wanted to know.
And that the truth.
Yeah. Donna, do you mind going next? If you're not ready.
No, I am. I was answering in chat.
You're very good in the chat. I appreciate it.
You know, I think the thing that I was going to say, a few examples, but what I am especially proud of that I think is relevant to this conversation is kind of how we last year really upgraded our full elections approach. And we did something, I'll drop it in the chat too, speaking of chat. we did something we call the election zone. And the way we did that, without going into vast, great detail, because you could tell on the site, but we kind of combined our solution circles, which hopefully maybe I can get to in a separate question, but we combined our community dialogues about elections, but also how media can cover elections better. We did a whole round of reporters focusing on different aspects of Project 2025, which, things that are coming to pass now, but how they were relevant to Mississippi before the election. I did a whole democracy series that's gotten a few people's attention that I'm still doing. And we put our youth media project kids that I'm talking about in the chat, high school kids, together with our staff to really brainstorm together through these shared dialogues. And then they participated in community dialogues to talk to people about what they needed to know about in elections and what they were concerned about. Now, we couldn't do anything about some of it because we were learning things that we really needed to know a year in advance. And so our approach was different. And one other thing I'll add to that is there was a real moment, some of you may know about because it got a lot of attention, but about maybe earlier last year, time runs together, but where Ashton Pittman, our news editor, and I decided, because like the New York Times and other outlets were just not giving any attention to Trump's comments about NATO on the front page, it was just ridiculous to us. And so Ashton wrote a story, and then I kind of wrote a piece saying that we were going to intentionally cover vital national news through the elections and beyond that people in our state might not get because of paywalls, which is a huge complaint that we get out of our solution circles around elections and other things. And we even got called out by this like national media critic and told to stick to our knitting. Now, don't tell a woman that, I'm just saying. And stay in our lane, that either. But we responded to that. And to be honest with you, that has been a remarkable thing for us that it raised our, whatever the word would be, I'm tired. But it really raised a lot of awareness about who we were.
Profile. Yeah.
We're in a lot of conversations now as a nonprofit outlet that nationally that will tell the truth, and we don't give two shits about party. I mean, that's not our interest. We just want to tell the truth. And that has gotten us a lot of support and donations and a lot of audience building. And we already raising money in 50 states. So we already had a lot of that, but it really increased it beyond what it was. And there were naysayers in the media like, why would you do that? And it's like, because you know what? Our people not getting this news in many cases.
Yep.
Because of these paywalls or just this scared media or whatever the case might be. And so it doesn't mean that we have given up at all on local. We are part of AP, so we can run their stories. We can run our own stories when necessary. We can localize. But what we did, I think, all around elections, I was very proud. And by the way, our sponsors of that election zone are at the bottom of that page. And so we really appreciate that there were a number of national folks who saw what we were trying to do and understood it.
Yep.
And so that's what I think I would focus on because there's a lot of different kind of coverage in the way that we were approaching that, including the trusted elections that I already talked about.
Yeah, yeah. So 3 things I have. 1, the fact that you were raising money in all 50 states is amazing. 2, can we just put Donna in charge?
Yeah.
Everything? Like, and then 3,
I'm
after
tired. No. I'm handing off on this as fast as I
sir.
can.
So after Nina talks, Donna, can we go back to you and talk more about the story circles because there's
Sure.
interest in that. Okay, Nina, go ahead.
Absolutely.
I'll just turn it back over to Donna. I'm just kidding.
Right, sure. All right, Donna, keep going about the story circles, then we'll go to Nina. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So solution circles, as we call them, solutions circles. It's something that I started doing with the high schoolers of the Youth Media Project before the pandemic, because we have this annual newsroom of high school students who get paid, and they're doing really incredible work. And so they wanted to do this a series of community dialogues about solutions to youth crime instead of all the BS coverage that we see around policing and such. And so I had been at a solutions journalism network, and if you're not familiar with it, you ought to look up their website because we're big believers in them. But I was at one of their summits, and I just really liked the way they ran their conference. It was very unconference. Now I'm very familiar with lots of unconference, but at the time I wasn't. So I said to the students, bottom line, why don't we do the circles this way? You know, everybody's equal. They're in the community. You know, people identify what they think the problems are and what they think the solutions are. They were really popular. So by the time that we started the MLP, you know, I learned a lot of things from the JFP, and I said, you know, I never want to host another panel discussion again, because I don't want to put a bunch of journalists at a front table or a bunch of experts, because the people are the experts and they need to tell us. So we don't host panels, period. I'll be on them or whatever, but I won't host them. And we started doing these solution circles and calling them solution circles at that point. And so what we're doing is that we're growing them out, and series in different communities, and we go into different communities around the state, and we find some local key connectors. There's a lot to this that I can't say all now, but we find people to help us get people out, and then we just grow them concentrically. And the idea, now we use a talking stick in the circles. And we explain why. If you look at the Solution Circle site, I think I put it in the chat. We even developed the golden rules of dialogue, of respectful dialogue, and we use Chatham House rule. So people don't think their name will just show up. They're amazing. And they're just amazing. And we use them for, reporters are always there, but we don't center ourselves. And so we're there, we're listening in. And then that's how we're getting story ideas that then we're kind of bringing back. We're starting to build out what we're doing with it after that. You know, we're getting better, and we're starting to map all the solutions and the concerns from different parts of the state. Becomes a source log. I mean, I just don't know how anybody ever did journalism without these kinds of dialogues, because if you want to be really inclusive and meet the community where they are, here you go. You know, this is the way to do it. And they're not there for us. Like, we don't really like to say that we, you know, come meet the staff. You know, we really try to unfocus who we are and get out of their way, put out lots of food. But yeah, so they're growing. We've had great support. I haven't spent a dime of operating money on them yet, which if you're a nonprofit, you know what I mean by that. It's very exciting. And so, yeah, and in fact, I have to call out American Press Institute again, because they've been really amazing as far as both some funding, but also helping raise the awareness of the circles nationally.
Yep. Well, it's all that community engagement, letting your community lead, is part of the DNA of media today. And if it's not, you're not going to succeed.
It's the opposite of horse race reporting.
Yes.
You know, it's just, or top down, you know. One of my problems is when people think statewide reporting means covering the Capitol.
Yeah.
Makes me nuts. That's not statewide. That's Capitol reporting. That's fine. It's legislative reporting. It is not statewide. Not unless you're going out into all those counties and asking those people what they think about what's going on. And, you know, so yeah, we're setting up bureaus where we're trying to have solutions reporting in all of the regions. So it's a lot of states or a lot of counties, so it'll take a minute, but we're working on it.
Yeah. Nina, tell us about the focus of Planet Detroit, some of the topics that you're covering, your audience, what they're interested in, and tell us about something you're proud of.
I will. I love that though, Donna, and I want to learn even more about it. So I'll probably be hounding you. So Planet Detroit covers the environment, but you know, that means a lot of things. A lot of things intersect with the environment. I would say just about anything intersects with the environment. So we cover a lot of topics, but mainly we cover air quality, water quality, housing and issues related to housing like lead pipes and lead paint. We cover food and food safety and food waste, increasingly covering health and of course climate and everything related to climate and impacts of heat and tree canopy in our city and all of those things. Drinking water is another big issue in Michigan. We've got, wonderful water resources and also really antiquated and crumbling water infrastructure system. Yes, we have lakes. So I guess one story I'll just mention that I was excited about, it wasn't a huge win, but it was just like one of those moments. We started reporting on, I'm sorry if there's background noise, there's apparently a bunch of college kids having a party all of a sudden in the other room. We started reporting on a chemical plant that had been on the Detroit River for decades and had been discharging polluted groundwater into the Detroit River in violation of consent orders. The state regulators had not been enforcing their the orders and sort of just letting them get away with it and promising that this is going to be mitigated in the future and but taking incremental steps. And we started reporting on it, and part of the story is that this where this groundwater is being discharged into the river is really close to a local municipal water intake in the Detroit River for a downstream community in Metro Detroit. And this is an area that is really undercovered. It's sort of, talk about the rust of the Rust Belt. This is a very urban and industrialized community that's been disinvested in downriver suburbs of Detroit, including Wyandotte. So Wyandotte has its own municipal water system. It's not part of the greater regional one, and they're very sort of proud of that. But it turns out that they were failing all kinds of violations. So that reporting on the chemical company led to discovering that, and I'll just throw the story here in the chat, that Wyandotte, not only did it not cover or not meet a lot of the requirements of the state in terms of its drinking water system, but also it stopped fluoridating its water like a decade ago and didn't tell, must have, made some kind of a notice, does make its notice in its state mandated reports that nobody reads. But residents had no idea that they were drinking unfluoridated water that we spoke to. And, we talked to a dentist, we talked to a parent. And so we set a little tracker using Muckrock's tool on their website, because their website said that they were fluoridating their water still. And within a couple of days of the report, actually the day the report came out, we got the ping that they had to change their website and noted that they weren't actually fluoridating their water. And this was something that, it maybe seemed like a small thing, but the daily papers were not covering this. And in fact, one of the dailies ran the story like a month later, as if it was hadn't been reported before. So that's one of the things that kind of made me proud.
My family used to live in Wyandotte and go downriver well. Yeah. And there's just so much environmental justice issues in that part of the state and in Detroit. Yeah. All right, thank you. So I'm collecting the questions from the chat. So just a reminder, if you've got questions in the, for this panel, please drop them in the chat. We're going to talk for like maybe 7 to 10 more minutes together, and then we're going to jump into some questions, because I probably have a half dozen that I've saved from the chat that haven't been answered yet. So let's talk now a little bit more general. Could you each tell us a little more about what do you think a strong independent news outlet means to a community? What are tangible outcomes and impacts, and what happens when there's not one? And by community, you can define that however you may. It may be a statewide community, maybe a local community, but what does that mean to you? What does a strong independent news outlet mean to a community? What happens when one's not there? So does anyone want to go first? Or I just go around the room? Unmute.
I can tell you my first reaction to the question, and that is telling the stories they don't want you to tell.
Yeah.
That's kind of my first reaction to it. There was, so in one of our communities, the upper leadership are all aging out. And we were talking to them about a succession plan. What happens next? Are there any talks about that? And they're like, no, that's not a story. And when they tell us, no, that's not a story, or, you know, when was the last time the water pipes, how many clay pipes do we still have? Oh, that's not a story. No, I'm thinking that's a story, you know, so they actually, I don't know, that's, I think our mission is to tell the stories they don't want us to tell. They have, when I say they, I mean, it could be organizations, it could be governmental entities, but they have avenues to get their story out that they want to tell, right? So it can be, you know, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. So we need to tell the stories that they're not telling. So that's the first thing that kind of comes to my mind. It's been hard because we've come onto the scene here in the last 2.5 years, and there was and is a newspaper in our area, but for the last 20 years, it's been a shell of what it once was. It was once an incredible paper. It's been around for more than 100 years. And I think everyone in leadership positions, whether they're elected or appointed or hired, have gotten, I don't know, out of the habit of having a true journalist asking questions. And it's been a bit of an uphill battle over these 2.5 years, but we're still fighting it.
Yeah, Donna, go ahead.
I add to what she said.
Yes.
I think I agree with that, because I think we're not here to pander to people, right? So we're here to tell the truth, and I mean that across the board. I mean, the people who've been the maddest at me in the state have probably been Democrats over the years because it wouldn't carry all the water. Now these Mississippi Democrats, so you can imagine, you know, trying to. But we don't carry anybody's water, right? And there are things that you have to tell. And so one of the things that we we kind of built our early reputation on back in 2021, I think, was the series that we call it the email series because we don't really use Ole Miss, but it was this. It's complicated, but it was this whole series about the rest of the story around these racist emails and the cover up that involved all kinds of media and the journalism department and all these things. And other outlets had some of these emails. We knew it because we'd seen the emails that sent them to them, but nobody would cover it, like, because it's like this gentleman's, quite literally, agreement, you know, that we're not going to cover this. And it was just terrible. I mean, and Ashton Pittman did remarkable work on it. And it was important. And it kind of goes back to what I was thinking when you first started talking to Angela. Back in the early, when we first started doing Jackson Free Press, I swear, a good 3/4 of the state, no matter what their politics were, did not believe that that the South, the Confederacy formed to over slavery. I mean, you know, so I spent a good 5 years educating the state way back then about what this history really is, you know, our full history. And so it's kind of, it all comes together. Like, it's so important to tell the truth. Now, what I will say is that I also think our job is to tell the stories that people want us to tell that aren't told. And particularly for people who are not represented in media or considered especially for paywalls or considered for a lot of the chain media that we're dealing with all over again now, who, you know, are doing paywalls. Even nonprofits are doing paywalls in some cases. And so the stories that they want told about their communities and about their kids and about what the realities are, it is our job to tell those stories, even if there are other people who don't want to hear them. And my experience has been, and our slogan is do the right thing and wait. My experience is that if you do it, and you do it in an honest way, and you stay the course, and you know, you don't just kind of split it into we hate you because of this or whatever. People start to come together. And they come up to me in the grocery store. I really just didn't know that the Civil War was about or whatever. And you start seeing right there. Oh, I have so many grocery store moments, right? But it's like you start seeing right there that it's sticking. And this is long haul work. You know, it's not the juicy, quick story. If we want to help our communities come together, I mean, it's long haul work. A lot of us should have been doing, a lot more people should have been doing decades ago, but it's long haul work. It's not just overnight. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Akash?
Sorry, remind me what
Yeah. What does a strong
into it. Yeah.
local independent news outlet mean to a community? What happens when you have one, and what happens when there's not one?
Yeah. There are so many aspects of this. I mean, one very basic one is just when there is no one publicizing what people in power are doing, they lose the reflex to look over their shoulder, and when they're making decisions, and they just assume, as is the case in, you know, in Albany, where our coverage focuses, that there just becomes a default assumption that what goes on behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. Um, and it leads to an enormous amount of cynicism and apathy, from ordinary citizens, because because you know, like, for instance, a place like Albany is so famously corrupt and notoriously corrupt, it becomes a byword for corruption, and people just check out because, not only because they don't know what's going on, they have no way, and because they don't know what's going on, they can't get involved, and make their voices heard, and so instead you know, they just tune out. And I think that is a big part, by the way, of what you saw last November in New York, which had the largest, you know, vote swing, to Trump in the nation.
Yeah, thanks, Nina. What do you want to add?
I'll add, I can't remember if it was Angela or Donna that said it, that, you know, these powerful interests have ways of getting their story out. You know, they have massive budgets for media campaigns. They also have lobbyists. They also have, you know, people that go into communities and bend the ears of, you know, ministers and politicians. And, you know, they have an amazing arsenal of power, and without somebody who's not beholden to, you know, the payola or the influence, they're not going to be held accountable. And, you know, one example of that we deal with in our state is some of our, especially one of our state utilities, which just continually pays out through different various 501c4 type organizations to influence politicians, and gets away with a lot, and is very, very seldom called to task in the mainstream media. I would say that's changed maybe in the last couple of years, but we were one of the earlier ones, you know, continuously pointing out, you know, these donations and this influence. And if people are, you know, they have a lot of money, they'll support your event, they'll fund your event, they'll do whatever they can to kind of keep you quiet. And so, you know, there's one group in particular that, you know, a lot of media take money from. We haven't taken money from, and, you know, without somebody willing to just stand up and tell the truth, as Donna has said, I think 5 times during this presentation.
Yeah.
It's just the, you know, business as usual.
Yep. Thank you. So the other thing I would just add to that all is that studies also show, which most of you know, that when there is local news and local journalism, civic participation increases. There's a direct correlation to people participating more in their democracy when there is local news in a community. So there's a lot of questions in the chat. We're going to start getting to a few of them. There's been a bunch of discussion about things related to the current political environment. And one of the questions was about personal safety. And I know I've been involved in a lot of conversations over the last 6 months, but even before that, about how journalists can maintain their safety and maintain the safety of their families, because there has been an increasing number of threats of violence and swatting and all of that against journalists in the United States. This is not new, but it's definitely absolutely on the rise. I mean, I first got my Delete Me subscription in 2019, but it's, way worse now. So would anyone like to start off by speaking to that? How are you addressing safety for you and your journalists in this current environment?
I would say that we're starting to talk about it more seriously and still grappling with it. And particularly, we have one of our reporters that covers our Latino community in Southwest Detroit, where there's a lot of ICE activity right now. I mean, certainly not only there; it's just about everywhere right now. But really trying to, and she's a Report for America, reporter, young person who's not seasoned, and so really trying to just talk to her about where she's going, what she's doing, looking for resources about safety, and then also protecting the safety of our sources by figuring out how to
That's a
offer
great point. Yeah.
anonymity and making sure we're not exposing people to having their identity exposed.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Anyone else? Akash, Angela, Donna, about safety?
Well, I put some things in the chat
Yeah,
to
thank
answer
you.
that question. So I won't say a lot if anybody, because I've been chatty already. But I would say, I kind of made the quip, but it was serious. It was real that we were in Mississippi. But the funny thing is that we haven't had nearly as many threats as you might think we would have over the years. I like to say this because it's funny, but my partner in the Jackson Free Press, who's upstairs in our house here, Todd Stauffer, who now heads the Association of Alternative News Weeklies, or AM publishers, he was the only one who was ever really stalked. And it was by a man who didn't like our Confederate coverage, who was from Brooklyn.
Those of you who
And so he
participated in-
stalked us, and it was stalked Todd. And that was when we first got, and this was before, before the pandemic and all that, but that's when we first got cameras on our door because of this guy. So, I mean, part of the message there, other than just that I thought it was funny, is that he's from Brooklyn, but is that you don't know, you just don't know where it's going to come from. And I think that's something that's very important to think about. Sometimes it could be somebody who is having a mental health crisis or whatever the case might be. But we really can, we advise our folks to do everything that they can in their personal safety at home. And we've certainly upped ours over the years since my coverage of a Democratic mayor here, Frank Melton, some years ago. So, yeah, I mean, we just have to do that. We are trying as our managers now to really kind of put together to a review to figure out where our holes are, because we don't want us to take for granted, that we're already doing everything right. And so I'm really trying to do that now. I've talked to the Committee to Protect Journalists about some trainings around ICE. That's one thing that, around what happens if you are covering some of those events, I think is very interesting. And there was a great panel at your conference, I think, Stephanie, in Denver. This Committee to Protect Journalists there. That was
the Committee to Protect Journalists, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press.
Yeah.
And PEN America. PEN America has been a huge.
Yeah, and so they're helping a lot, like know what you can and can't get away with, and some things like that. So
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, because you just don't know, but.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So move on to another question. That question had earlier been from Signe Kasberg too. So Milo asked, with Americans drowning in information, silos of infotainment, corporate media algorithms, and disinformation. How have you found new readers to grow your audience? How are you growing your audiences, and how are you finding younger readers too, or watchers? Anyone want to take that first? Akash, go ahead.
Yeah, well, one audience strategy that I'm incredibly excited about, and that has been sort of spreading among a lot of news organizations, and is a testament to the fact that there are too few of us anymore to compete, and so collaboration has become in vogue, is just sharing content. So every story that we publish, somewhere between one and, well, like local news outlets across the state are welcome to republish republish them, and about 40 do regularly. And so this just gets it in the hands of people, and literally on the doorsteps of people who might who might otherwise not encounter us. One of my favorite moments last year was a letter to the editor published in the Daily Star, which is a local paper in Oneonta, New York. It's been around since 1890. It's the type of paper that might have had, a reporter in Albany or a whole bureau in Albany covering state politics and how it affects, central New York. But like so many papers, is much smaller than it used to be. And they regularly republish our work. And a letter to the editor was published there saying, kudos to the Daily Star for publishing New York Focus. It's a breath of fresh air to see the workings of the state government uncovered in a nonpartisan, unbiased way. So that's one strategy. Of course, readers of local newspapers are disproportionately older. For younger New Yorkers, overwhelmingly the place they're getting their news is through social media, and through video based social media, which has been tough for us because we are so text based. Our bread and butter is the 2,000 word article. It's not a 30-second video. But we're thinking a lot about how to translate those articles into other formats, both through partnering with influencers and content creators on those platforms, and through doing it ourselves.
You're already tackling another question about social media that was in the chat. Anyone else? Donna, Nina, or Angela, tell us a little bit about how you're growing your audience, and then also if you will touch on social media too.
I guess I'll talk a little bit about growing audience in terms of in-person contact. So we've been tabling at events, and getting email signups. It's very, intensive time commitment, but it's great to be able to actually talk to people face to face. One of the challenges related to that I'm trying to figure out a better solution for is when people write their emails down, it is really hard to get it right. So we have a higher error rate than I would like. But that's one way. We make all of our content free, in the Creative Commons, and send it to other news organizations on a weekly basis to encourage them to republish it. So we get republished quite a bit, including partnerships with local ethnic media where we have translated into Spanish and into Arabic. So those are two of the ways. And then I don't know how to crack the social media video thing. We do have an intern now that's working on creating reels for us and hopefully teaching us how to do reels. But it's a time consuming thing, and it's just not natural for I guess us older folks. So I do want to be able to get our content in front of people like the Gen Zs who are my kids. But yeah, I don't have a good answer for that one. If anybody does, please let me know.
Angela or Donna?
Well, I don't have a good answer either. It's been one of our struggles that we're getting better on. Like Nina and Akash, we do also lean on collaborations in North Carolina. The Assembly is one of them, where our content is also distributed. Smoky Mountain News, we have a partnership with them as well. The bulk of our content, though, in the paper is locally driven. You know, it's our reporters or people in our community who submit things. We started out with such a strong print focus, and in this 2.5 years, we've really exploded into, or trying to. Maybe it's more like a little sparkler than an explosion, but we're trying to engage more through social media. We've done things where partnering with our local community college. They have a really strong AV and gaming program there, and we are partnering with those students to create some videos for us, and also to begin hosting podcasts there. And we also have, we're lucky in our town, there are 2 schools for science and math, high schools in the state, and we're home to one of them. And we're also collaborating with those students on data science, where they're kind of slicing and dicing the community and where our subscribers are and where our holes and where we should go are. So that's some of the things we're doing.
Great. And Donna, how are you growing audience?
Well, we're doing a couple different things that we're working on. One, I mean, we're we have our high school project, which is in Jackson, but the young people, we're inviting teenagers to come back as mentors, and we've kind of got a really good system going of that. And a lot of those kids want to help us, teenagers, I shouldn't say kids, want to help us figure out how to get the work out around the state. And so I'm kind of pondering this documenters of using high school kids as documenters in different, somebody I met at an API thing recently was doing that. And so I'm kind of following up kind of on that idea. And then as far as we are actually, what we're talking about video right now. We don't want to be what Todd upstairs used to call the worst television station in the state, just putting out crap videos. So we're trying to figure that out. And basically I've asked one of our reporters, Heather, she's like 24, and she's very, she's like the main person who actually does vertical video on her own. And so she and I met about that, and she's going to get out and do all this research and figure things out. And so I've met some folks that I'm hoping can help with that. And then the other thing I'll say, though, is that, which overlaps with young people, is that we're really trying to grow our rural audiences, because this 82 counties and most of Mississippi's rural, right? And so solution circles help with that, but we are also, we're building these like kind of bureau areas in different places. And so we're trying to make sure that our coverage is all over the state, but not just news coverage, soft coverage. If you look at our site, we do persons of the day. I think our features editor has now claimed fame for having done it at least one in 82 counties at this point, and then a lot of that kind of, it's really important to do good, softer cultural coverage. And I think that we today get away from that too much. That's shrinking in some ways, and
Yes.
that nonprofits, generally speaking, a lot of nonprofits don't put enough effort into that.
Yes, totally
So
agree.
we're doing some doubling down. We've always done people coverage, like everyday people, not the people at the legislature, as much, but we talk about what they do. But like, who can we feature? And so those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do, and just get out around the state more. And gather up with people. And by the way, there's a great organization in Denver that I just heard. I'm not even going to say the conference, because I would say API again, but this Warm Cookies of the Revolution. If you have not heard of this organization, go to their website and look at the kinds of events they're doing, especially if you're in media, because it's so creative, and they're creative and civic. And so we're about to copy stuff that they're doing. So that's
You're
one.
you've been making Michael Bolton's heart warm, even though he's a dean now and not running API.
I know. Well, I love them. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't,
right.
they've been
Yeah.
so
And we love Todd upstairs, Donna. Make sure
Yeah.
that Todd upstairs knows that there's love for him on this
I
panel.
told him about this was happening, but
He's
I think
missed,
he's trying to get the water turned back on. So
We got 6 minutes. I really want to try to squish in 2 last questions so not everyone has to answer them. And the one is that there's a lot of people on this conversation tonight who've been posting the chat and who are listening to you, who have been trying to fill gaps in their communities. They've been trying to fill information gaps. There's a lot of folks who are doing newsletters or sharing things in social media, and they've been asking questions about how they grow, how they make a name for themselves. So could one or two folks talk a little bit about how quickly, how you scaled from something smaller to what you are now? Akash, yeah, go ahead. You got this one.
Sure, yeah. I heard Nina say that their revenue, that Planet Detroit's revenue has doubled every year, which was about the trajectory New York Focus was on. So I sort of predicted that in 10 years we would be half of the global GDP, but unfortunately it leveled off. But no, we launched in 2020 with with very little in the way of resources and sort of no plan to get them. Like I don't know what we were thinking. But we did from the very beginning, in parallel to the effort of doing good journalism, we also really prioritized getting the word out about good journalism to people who could fund it. And so especially initially that started with local foundations, both national foundations interested in journalism and local New York foundations, many of whom were interested in, issue areas. So our first two big grants, or two of our first grants, were to support a criminal justice reporter and a climate reporter from foundations focused on both of those issues. And so, our budget in 2021 was $200,000. 2022 was about 500,000. 2023 was a little under a million, and this year we'll be at something like 2.3 million, which is still a absolute sliver of the need. I mean, this is a state where we spend each year $230 billion, which is more than 90% of countries. And we have, on two hands, you could list the number of reporters doing in-depth accountability work, tracking how that money is being spent.
So it's okay if you start out not with a perfect plan. You too could be New York Focus. You just got to keep working hard at it. I'm really grateful to all of you for participating today. So there's one last question that maybe one person can take, and then we're going to hand it back over to our host tonight, who are going to tell us a little bit more about why we should support local news. And that was a question in the chat earlier from Michelle, who said most citizens do not even know about the local news media. How do we let the public know more about you and the network that's growing around the United States of nonpartisan, no paywall media? So would anyone like to answer that super quick before we hand it back over to our hosts? How do we let more people know about this? Donna, go ahead. Nina,
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, I'm happy to tell people. I mean, social media, we just get so many people lifting us up on social media that are not in our state. And I think they like the way we're doing it. I think some of it is the Mississippi surprise part, but I'll take it, that we're here and we do what we do and we, we wear shoes. But get the word out, and just tell people to support local media in every way that you can. I mean, individual donors we started with $50,000 in 2020, and we were at $1 million revenue by 2023, and 60% of that was individual donors from all 50 states.
Wow.
And we thank everybody by phone. We send a note to everybody if you give $5. I mean, we build relationships, but that's what I think everybody could do. Think of local media as part of your friend circle.
Yeah.
No matter where we are, especially in this time.
Oh my gosh. Yep, exactly.
This bullshit about, people lecturing Mississippians about things because, you know, a slight majority, give or take, of our people voted a certain way. I mean, you know, look at the country as it's a country. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
thank
what I
you.
want to say to
Yeah,
people. You know,
thank you.
support the country, support the media that's doing the right thing for democracy in the country, because we're all in it together.
Yep. Thank you so much. So it's getting dark here and the bugs are going to carry me away in New Jersey in a moment if we don't wrap this up. So I'd like to hand it back over now to Jonathan and Judy and Milo and the team. Thank you for hosting us today.
Well, thank you very much to everybody. Am I unmuted yet? I can't see the screen. Yes, I am. So yeah, this is fabulous, and you guys really made the case for local journalism. We don't need to, but we do want to say a few words. If I can figure out how to share my screen. And thanks everybody for staying this whole thing, although it was fascinating, so I'm not surprised. Most importantly, I want to say that we have a directory that has more than 2,000 news outlets, state and local, in all 50 states and Puerto Rico, and DC. And so look at your state and you'll find outlets like the ones that we heard tonight, and encourage, as they were saying, everybody to follow them and support them. Matt has meetings. Again, we'll send out the links. So, but we have monthly meetings every Monday or third Monday of the month. We just launched, you're the first people to hear about this. We're working to comment on some FCC matters relating to local TV news or local news stations in general. And we're looking to enlist some support and do a survey of what's going on in your communities. So that event is August 8th. And we'll also be sending out a survey. So look for that. And then there are a lot of different sorts of government programs to support local news and legislation to enhance them. So we listed the states that we know have bills in them. It's probably not a full list. And if you're not in any of those states, you could still reach out to us and we can see if we can find something or maybe spur something. So thanks everybody for being here. And look at the follow-up emails, because it's important for all of us to be active in this and to be supporting local news and otherwise active in our communities. So now I'll turn it over to whoever from Markers. Ellen, are you picking it up?
Yeah, I'm going to close it out here by saying thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank the Media and Democracy Project and Jonathan and Milo and Stephanie, our moderator extraordinaire, and Donna, Akash, Nina, and Angela. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It was really nice to hear what you had to say. We hope to have more of these at some point in the future. We will let you all know. And I think we're going to try and save the chat and include it in the follow-up email that is coming to you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks to the speakers. This was
Thanks
really
for being here.
event.